UCLA Bruins Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Ferguson, writer for UCLA on SI. Today we have Max Dorsey back on the show to discuss some recruiting, any news that's happened since we last met. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that happened with basketball, but today's going to be a strictly football episode, unless Max wants to get into it a little bit later. But yeah, starting off, do you want to give like a quick rundown on, what we've seen this, last week, and then we'll kind of break them down point by point.
Yeah, there's been a lot of football news over the past week on the recruiting trail for UCLA. I think the biggest story here is the fact that they landed a late transfer portal commitment from Mason Rivera. This is a FCS transfer from Cal Poly, and we'll get into that a little later, like you said. And then on the high school recruiting trail side of things, it's been a lot of scheduling some of their top targets on official visits and spring visits. So you're really starting to see Chesney and his staff kind of make a late, or I guess just in general, make a push here for some of their top targets in the 2027 class as that cycle continues to heat up. But like you talked about, we can just kind of go step by step here.
Awesome. Yeah. Let me know a little bit more about Mason Rivera. Obviously, Cal Poly, FCS, late transfer. So it's kind of unique in that sense. Does he produce well? Is he like one of those players who will make an impact day one as a Bruin, or what do you see with him?
Yeah, I think for a lot of fans, the transfer portal can be super confusing. So just a quick rundown. It opened at the start of January and then technically closed, I believe, on the 16th. So we saw most of the transfer portal movement, I'm sure fans remember, during that window. However, players who entered the portal during that window and didn't commit during that window are still eligible to commit to schools throughout the offseason. So Rivera entered the portal way back in December, kind of slow played his portal recruitment, had interest from several Division I schools, but ultimately committed to UCLA yesterday. And then in terms of what he brings to the table, this is a guy that started immediately in 2022 as a true freshman for Cal Poly before getting injured in 2023. So he sat out that entire season, redshirted, came back, played an impact in 2024, and was an All Big Sky conference, or earned All Big Sky conference honors that season as well. And then again, started all 12 games for Cal Poly in 2025. He's a terrific safety at the FCS level. It's going to be interesting to see what, I guess, kind of how his game translates to the FBS level, especially the Power 4 level in the Big Ten. But yeah, this is a talented player. I don't think he'll necessarily be, a full-time starter for UCLA, but definitely a great depth piece. I think they'll bring him in certain packages, and he will see snaps on defense. And then in general, again, this is a guy that can obviously make an impact on special teams as well. He has 1 year of eligibility remaining, so this is kind of just not a Band-Aid, but just more depth to the secondary, which is really something that Chesney needed to address in the transfer portal window. So overall, this is a big-time signing for the Bruins.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And especially if you're Rivera, obviously you want to play for UCLA or go to school there for your last year. So it's a good move for both sides. But yeah, on the topic of kind of defensive backs and that kind of thing, we had a Jerry Outhouse from Texas. He kind of came in, or UCLA wants to set up a visit with him. And then, like you said, Chuck Roberts from UNC, defensive back, 3-star, obviously already committed to a team. But I guess UCLA is making some progress. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so to start with Outhouse, this is a guy that is one of the top defensive backs in the country. He's the number 123 overall player in the 2027 class and the number 11 overall cornerback. Super talented player, has been pursued by several schools throughout his recruitment. And as we get into kind of the thick of the 2027 cycle, he's starting to set up his official visit. So he'll travel to UCLA from May 15th to May 17th. He'll be on campus in Westwood for an official visit. It's a huge step in the Bruins recruitment for him. It will give Chesney and his staff a chance to really solidify their relationship with him and improve their overall standing in his recruitment before making a decision. And I think the important thing to note here is that when it comes to UCLA specifically, a lot of the 2027 cycle stuff, they're kind of behind on because Chesney was hired in December. So they're really trying to make progress with some of these top targets. They're offering a lot of these players late in their processes. So it's kind of a steady climb for Chesney and the Bruins at this point in player like Outhouse's recruitment. But this is a guy that is definitely attainable for them to land. And I think getting him on campus is a huge step for them. And then in terms of Chuck Roberts, it's an interesting spot to be in for UCLA, because this is a guy that's already committed to UNC, committed to North Carolina back in December. Another really talented defensive back. He's a number 433 overall player in the class and the number 39 safety. He's originally from Mission Hills, California, but goes to school in IMG Academy in Clearwater, Florida. And this is a guy that UCLA, even though he was committed to UNC, offered, kind of going along the lines of how, Chesney and his staff have a lot of ground to make up in general in the 2027 cycle. So they're not shying away from targeting committed players. And yeah, I think they've made it, a strong early impression on Roberts. Obviously, with him being committed to UNC, it's not going to be easy for them to pry him away from the Tar Heels. But they are in a good spot with him. He's interested in the program, and that's going to be a recruitment to watch to see if, potentially UCLA could flip him down the line here.
Yeah, no, it obviously, yeah, UCLA does have lots to make up, but I think they're doing well with Roberts, because like in your article, and you put a quote, I think Robert said they would do whatever to get me. It's a great staff. That sends a message to him. Obviously, I think that's only a good thing for UCLA. If they could really, flip him, maybe that inspires other players to flip who are already committed, because again, that's a big time, landing for UCLA if they're able to do it. More like offensively, we had Ty Johnson, Blake Wong, and Zach Fairs, tight end from Las Vegas. So out of those three players, which one do you think UCLA has the most traction on, who can get? It's like things like that. Break them down for me.
Yeah, so Fairs, Wong, Ty Johnson, and another wide receiver, Damani Warren, are also all players who have scheduled official visits with the Bruins this spring. Fairs will be there from June 5th to June 7th. He's one of the top tight ends in the class, the number 202 overall player in the country, the number 13 tight end in the 2027 class. UCLA just offered him recently in January, and they've, and you'll see this with a lot of recruitments and what Chesney and the staff are kind of attempting to do here in the 2027 cycle, but they've been making quick progress with some of these players and emerging as serious contenders for a lot of these guys, and Fairs is one of them. He'll take an OV with the Bruins in June. I know he has another one scheduled with UNLV because he's from Las Vegas and Nevada, goes to Arborview High School, and then Texas as well. So UCLA will face some competition on him, but a terrific tight end prospect and someone that I know Chesney and the staff are very excited about. Damani Warren is another Arborview High School kid, so actually teammates with Fairs from Las Vegas, Nevada. He doesn't have an official visit date scheduled, but he's expected to take an official visit with UCLA in mid-May. And I know he's taking an unofficial visit to a spring practice with the Bruins in April. So another player that UCLA just offered last month and has quickly gained progress in his recruitment. He's the number 244 overall player in the 2027 class and the number 30 wide receiver. And then Blake Wong, this is a local kid, a Cali kid. He'll be on campus from June 5th to June 7th, the number 355 overall player in the 2027 class and the number 48 wide receiver. Another kid that's just, UCLA just offered last month, and they've slowly made progress with him. And you're going to see that with a lot of the players that UCLA ends up landing in the 2027 cycle. Yes, the Bruins are entering these recruitments relatively late. A lot of these guys have already had schools host them on, visits throughout the season. They went to junior days. So I think UCLA and Chesney have been, very aggressive over the last few months in terms of targeting the guys that they want to target, making progress with those same guys. And now it's resulted in them hosting, all of these guys are top 400 players that we've talked about. So 5 or 6 top 400 players on campus in Westwood are locked in for spring visits.
Yeah, no, it's looking good. I mean, we're starting to see that more Bob Chesney's recruiting philosophy. We know he wanted to target the West Coast a lot more. I know you mentioned 2 players from Las Vegas. I mean, that's a 3-hour drive from Westwood. So I'm really liking to see this. Obviously, it's a good thing. California has a lot of talent. But out of all those offensive players, who do you think would be the biggest get for UCLA and that kind of thing? Who's the most talented currently on your screen right now?
Yeah, I mean, all of these prospects are highly talented, so this isn't to take away anything from any of them. But I think you're kind of seeing a trend here early of Chesney wanting to rebuild this wide receiver room. So UCLA is going after wide receivers. So this is kind of a cop-out to your question, but I'm just going to say every wide receiver that they're bringing in. So Damani Warren, Ty Johnson, and Blake Wong are all going to be crucial here for UCLA. It's a position of need. It's something that obviously they address in the portal, but a lot of the guys that they brought in the portal are really only going to be there for 1 or 2 seasons. So long term, Chesney is hoping to rebuild this position and put together a really strong wide receiver class in the 2027 cycle for UCLA. And I think getting those 3 guys on campus should put the Bruins in position to land at least one of them.
Awesome. Yeah. And like you said, I mean, Chesney is really starting to rebuild that wide receiver room. Do you think moving forward, obviously this year was kind of an outlier because, like I said, first year they had a lot to make up. But do you think moving forward, it's going to be more portal heavy, or, he's going to start building from the ground up when it comes to receivers in the future years?
I think in terms of really any position, any good coach at this point in college football is going to do a mixture of both the portal and high school recruiting. I think the key thing for the best programs is you're bringing in your top talent and developing players through high school recruiting, and then you're supplementing where you need the most help in the portal each year. So I think you're going to see, or you've seen this at places like obviously the top tier schools like Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State. These schools are still bringing in top recruiting classes every single season and getting players at positions of need from the high school ranks in every single recruiting cycle. But then in the transfer portal, they go and they supplement where they need the most help on the roster. So I think Chesney and his staff are really looking to do that, whether it's at wide receiver or just across the roster in general. I think you're going to see them really target the top players at the high school ranks and try to build most of their team through high school recruiting and then start to supplement through the portal. But obviously, like you said, 2027, this offseason has kind of just been a whim for UCLA with all the chaos that's happened. So Chesney had to use the portal to his advantage. But I would say in future years, you're going to see them, rely on the portal less and less.
Yeah. And also, I mean, Bob Chesney's coming from, James Madison. So, I mean, James Madison wasn't the best transfer school by far. UCLA kind of has that. So there's a lot more room for UCLA to kind of grow in that way because Bob Chesney is not used to it. But now that he has the resources and, the name next to him, obviously a lot more people are going to look their way in the transfer portal. So I think that can only be a good thing for UCLA. And if you're a fan, obviously that is a big that's huge. You want your school to be that, that beacon of the West Coast where players want to kind of come over. Yeah, that kind of wraps up the receivers. I just want to ask, have you seen any trends offers wise? Are you starting to see one position group get more offers than another? And kind of break through that.
Yeah, so throughout January, and this was kind of like every program, it really wasn't just UCLA because it was a contact period. You saw basically every program in the country starting to extend offers to hundreds and hundreds of 2027 prospects. So really trying to get their foot in the door with a lot of recruitments here. And UCLA was no different. And then once the contact period ended at the end of January and we kind of enter a dead period here in February, those offers have really started to slow down. And now schools are really only targeting, players that they really want and are kind of slow playing recruitments because they can't contact these guys at the current moment. So what we've seen UCLA do over the past, or just really over the course of February, I would say, is really hone in on the offensive line. They've targeted a lot of offensive linemen, especially in the last 2 weeks. Some of the top offensive linemen in the class. I wrote a piece earlier this week about how they offered 2 4-star prospects. I think they were both top 70 players in the country. Olu Bob-Ola from St. Peter's Prep in Jersey City, New Jersey was one, and Leighton Von Brandt from Middletown, Delaware was another. I know they targeted Mark Matthews, another 4-star prospect from St. Thomas Aquinas in Florida, and then Kalel Johnson from Ohio as well. So really honing in on the offensive line is the trend we've kind of seen here in recent months, and I think that kind of speaks to what we were just talking about with wide receivers, is that Chesney is really focusing on, okay, where does my roster have the biggest holes? And me and you talked about this, I think, in our first podcast together, Andrew, was the offensive line was one of the biggest positions of need and probably is still the weakest point on UCLA's roster heading into next season. So I think now, and you're going to continue to see this, Chesney and the staff are really going to start targeting some of the top offensive linemen in the country. And what you have to remember about UCLA is this is one of the top programs in the country, right? They can't shy away from targeting that top talent. And Chesney has certainly not done that at all. And I think he'll continue to pursue, some of the top players in the country at all positions. But we've really seen offensive line in recent weeks.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. We need to build that offensive line. Obviously, Dean Kennedy likes to run the ball a lot. So having that line that supports that is going to be huge, in the coming years. This year might be a little, an outlier year because, Wayne Knight's a great running back. So, the offensive line having to rely on the offensive line isn't going to be as whatever. But down the road when he leaves, you're going to need to build that a lot better. Just to kind of wrap things up, it really does look like UCLA is starting to make a lot of strides in the California West Coast area. And that's what you want to see. Chesney obviously say that that's what he wants to do. So I think that's awesome that he's doing it. Mason Rivera, we talked about him. Great pickup for UCLA, late, obviously, but still, UCLA is really starting to build their identity as a California team, and we're starting to see that more and more. But yeah, that's all I have today. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we end things off?
No, that's it for me. I would say, just keep an eye out for UCLA fans, or to tell UCLA fans to keep an eye out for some more exciting news on the recruiting trail. I think, over the next few months, there's going to be a lot of exciting news. And I believe I said this last week too, but it's an exciting time to be a Bruin. Chesney is really starting to rebuild this program. And I think, some of the top talent, whether it's at the transfer portal ranks or at the high school ranks, are going to start coming to Westwood.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a grind coming soon, but that's what you want to see. But again, that's all we have today. Join us again next Wednesday for more recruiting if there's more news that pops up. As always, fours up and have a good day.